Welcome back to the Club dVIN Roadmap series. This is episode 6. Last week, we talked about tokenizing private sellers. That was a great episode. It's going to be coming out. I think we're releasing it over the next couple of days. If you guys missed that, be sure to check it out. That is our latest new feature at Club dVIN. Oh, Dave's giving me the. Oh. We're today. This never happens. Dave just brought me a glass of wine. Thank you. Great service. I'm just gonna edit out my screaming here when I edit this podcast. Cheers, Dave.
Salut.
All right. So welcome back, guys. As I was saying, this is episode 6 of the Club dVIN series. And today we're going to be talking about the future of Club dVIN. So all of our upcoming ideas, inspirations. We're going to be a little bit on AI. There's a lot of happening right now in the world of AI. So we'll delve a little bit into that. And what else, Dave? Future of dVIN tonight.
Well, I think what the most important thing for me is for us to talk about, like, we talk a lot. We spend a lot of time talking about the club. We spend a lot of time talking about, digital corks and tasting tokens. What I think we should talk about is why. Like, why are we doing all this? What's the end goal? What's the long-term goal? I think on the website we say, the wine industry's worked the same way for 1,000 years, and we want to build the platform for the next 1,000. So what does that have to do with these little NFTs that we do? Like, why is that the future of the wine industry? And like, what does it do? So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Yeah, I think we can talk a little bit about AI. There's some kind of fun AI stuff that we're interested in doing. But I think the main thing is, what can the blockchain do for winemakers and wine lovers that will, as we say, connect winemakers and wine lovers? How can the blockchain do that? And then why is it important? Like, why does it help wine lovers? Why is it a cool thing?
Great. Okay, so before we get into it, we'll do our introductions for those of you who don't know us already. My name is Jana Kryline. I am a wine communicator, WSET diploma holder. You might know me as the Wine Girl on Instagram. I've done a couple TV projects with Aldo Somm in Austria. Mostly just traveling the world, drinking wine, and hanging out with Dave. Dave is the founder of Club dVIN. Dave, I'll let you introduce yourself. Dave's cool. He does all kinds of really, really interesting wine media projects, books, podcasts, really, really cool stuff. So go ahead, Dave. Tell us all about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Dave Garrett. I've been, I've been in the wine industry for a long time, for 20 years. First in Argentina. I spent almost 10 years there, building a big winery project, vineyard, resort, spa, Francis Mallmann restaurant, really cool destination resort in the Uco Valley in Mendoza. Then spent a couple in Hong Kong working on a wine tech project. And for the last 10 years or so, I've been here in Barcelona working on a project in the Priorat, and then doing a bunch of kind of really cool wine media projects. I published a couple of books and a podcast series. Now working on a couple of different television shows. One of them called Crush, which is profiles up and coming cult winemakers from around the world. Another one called Rosé All Day, which is just kind of a fun wine. Yeah, it's a fun wine tourism, like going out and tasting, like wine tasting, wine tourism, wine hospitality show. And then we got another kind of interesting project coming up. Actually, we're going to be in Burgundy next week, filming just the very beginnings of a very kind of a secret project that we can't really talk about yet, but it's going to be super fun. So if we're a little bit off the grid next week, it's because we're off, filming in Burgundy, which is going to be really fun. So maybe we'll post some teaser photos on social media, but you'll all hear a lot more about it over time. But in the short run, it's pretty exciting.
Dave, I'm the wine girl. Going to Burgundy with you and the team, and then I'm posting some stuff on social media. So guys, keep an eye on the Club dVIN account, keep an eye on my account. There'll be we'll tease it out a little, but not too much info. This is top secret mission.
I like it.
It is. All right, cool. So let's start by talking about what Club dVIN is kind of in a nutshell. And then we can kind of get into future plans and why we do what we do.
Sure. So,
cool.
Club dVIN is Club dVIN is the club element of a company venture called dVIN. Club dVIN is our as everybody, as we know, or if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, we have an NFT community that's called Club dVIN. Which is an NFT token community, token gated community that provides some really cool and really fun benefits to our members. But all of that is built on dVIN's underlying technology. And I was talking to, and it was kind of funny, and this is really, terrible marketing for me to admit on our podcast. But when they said, like, what's the difference between Club dVIN and dVIN? What I said was, well, what dVIN is creating is the technology stack for wineries to connect with wine lovers for the future. Like, we think if we do this thing right, that every luxury winery on the planet should use this technology to quickly and easily connect with their consumers, to offer them rewards and status and incentives and create community around their brands. And what Club dVIN is it's an opportunity for people to pay to be guinea pigs and probably suffer through all of our initial mistakes. That sounds horrible, but it really is true. I mean, the truth is, Club dVIN is early adopters. It's the people that are brave, and I'm gonna like frame them as Christopher Columbus, right? Like, are willing to brave these kind of uncharted new waters and understand that things are going to be rocky at times, and sometimes things aren't going to work, and things are going to be a little bit choppy, but in the end, they're going to be the first people that set foot in the new world. And that's really what we're doing with Club dVIN. It's a very small group. We only have 5,000 total members. There will only ever be 5,000 members, but those are going to be the first people to have wines with digital corks. They're going to be the first people to mint tasting tokens. They're the first people that are going to tasting tokens with their friends and family. They're the first people that are going to be able to kind of redeem all of the rewards getting from winemakers. And so they're going to help us. They're going to kind of help us troubleshoot and test out. They're going to tell us what works and what doesn't. They're going to tell us what they hate and what they love and what they wish we did. And based on that, we're going to build out amazing technological, amazing technology features and a technology stack, so that when we turn it on with the winemakers, they get it, and they're getting something that not only has been thoroughly tested by kind of the early adopter wine lovers, but something that is a good product market fit. That we can assure them that the wine lovers have kind of gotten a chance on this and they love it, and we're going to give the winemakers the best of the best. So
Yeah.
hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that makes some. I don't want to be a member because I'm not an early adopter and I don't like it when things don't work and I don't want to do that. And it makes a bunch of other people say, I want to be the first person to put my boots in the new world. And I want
I
to,
like that.
I'm willing
I
to
like
have the choppy C, but I want to see that.
I like the explorer reference there, the Christopher Columbus thing. That's great. Yes. Yeah, I get that's a really good way to put it. So I'm going to summarize that a little bit. Club dVIN then is the private club, and dVIN is a premium platform for NFTs and wine. Okay, and so let's talk about the wineries. So, you're saying we're bringing on members, we're doing cool events all over the world, we're giving our members benefits, basically to buy some of the most hard to find wines on the planet for 10, 20, 30% cheaper than you'd find perfect provenance directly from the wineries. That's one of the big member benefits of joining the club. But these wineries that we're working with, what we've done at dVIN is we've actually started our pilot program. We started it last year, and we did our first install. Dave was in Porto to do the first install a couple of weeks ago with the oldest winery in the world, Graham's. But Dave, do you want to talk a little bit more about our plans to on board wineries? And we have
Sure.
a 2-year waiting list right now of wineries that want to work with us. So why don't you give us some insight? How's that going to run?
So our expectation is that we'll onboard about 25 wineries this year, 2 a month, which is it's actually going to be more than 2 a month because we're really just gearing up now. When we onboard wineries, and I'll give you the example of Graham's. It's a really, really good example. So Graham's they're re-release. They have a really cool re-release that they're doing. They're releasing the 1970 port, which is a 50-year-old vintage port, one of their best vintages the last 100 years. And they're releasing it in a 2-bottle case with the 2020. So a 50-year-old, well, let's say 53-year-old vintage and a vintage, right? So the most recent. So those 2 vintages are separated by 50 years. And obviously, there's something fun that you can do with that. You could the 50-year-old vintage and the new vintage and see what the differences are and compare and contrast. Or you can taste the 1950 today with your children. Your children can taste the 2020 50 with their with your grandchildren or their grandchildren, right? Like it's kind of a neat, it's kind of a cool experience, and I think it's a really interesting initiative by Graham's. Now, this 2-bottle case is only going to be available in their at Graham's Lodge, which is their kind of hospitality, very cool winery and that has great hospitality in Porto. And if you haven't been there, you should. Beautiful. It tells kind of the whole history of port and the whole history of Graham's, which is like 250 years old. If you walk the winery, you can see barrels going back. I think there are some barrels going back, well 50 years. It's really, really interesting, and you can learn a lot. And obviously, taste good port. And then they've got a on the premises where you can, have a great meal and taste any of the Symington wines, and port, and the port of Portugal. So it's a really, really wonderful experience.
I actually
And so
have been
this
there.
wine,
I've been there.
have you been to Graham's
Beautiful
Lodge?
place. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really
I
nice.
mean, Porto and Douro Valley are that's my favorite place to go. When we're talking about wine destinations, made the biggest impression on me of anywhere else. And I've been around. So
Well, the
yeah,
Douro Valley, it's pretty similar
stunning.
to the Prira. A lot of similarities, very steep, very kind of different aspects to the sun, a lot of different different elevations, just a ton of little tiny microclimates in one little area, and obviously very difficult farming, but very difficult farming that produces fantastic wines.
Yeah.
Have you tasted any of the the last three or four releases. They're young, but man,
I have honestly,
showing
I have a
amazingly.
case. I have a case of 6 wines from the Douro that was sent to me. This is terrible. People just send me wine. People just send me wine and want me to sample
Tough
it.
life.
But there's a box there that is like I've been eyeing it, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So that'll be my homework for next week when I'm back from France.
Tough life, Jen.
I know
Well, I'll
it's
tell you,
hard.
I'm a big fan of the Juros. They're really fantastic. They're showing amazing.
Okay,
So
so
this two bottle
wineries.
case,
Yeah.
the 2 bottle case that's being released at Graham's is only being sold in the cave, so you can only actually go to Graham's Lodge and go through their, go do the tour of the winery and the tasting. Um, and so you go through that process, and then you can this 2 bottle case. The 2 bottle case costs, I don't know, 800. I think they're going to charge 800 or 850 euros for it. So
All
it's
right.
pretty, it's a 50-year-old bottle, so you can kind of it sort of makes sense. I think it more than makes sense if you take. It's probably a bargain. It's a steal. But what's interesting about it is they're attaching digital corks to both bottles. So when you go and you do this experience, the first thing that you can do is in their tasting room, there will be a QR code that's a dV QR code where you can claim a tasting token for the tasting experience right? So that's the first step. So you go through the tasting experience, you can get a tasting token for that. Then if you purchase that 2 bottle case, you get those 2 digital corks are dropped in your wallet. And the other thing that you get dropped in your wallet is a token that gives you access, that gives you a lunch at at that beautiful restaurant at Graham's Lodge. So you do your tasting in the morning, you finish it, you buy the 2 bottle case, you immediately get this token, this reward that to have this beautiful lunch at this. I think it's a 1-star Michelin restaurant that's part of the winery.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I had lunch there with the Symington family a few weeks ago, and it was fantastic. But here's where the cool part. You take that box. You can actually do 2 things. One is you can leave the box at the winery for, I think, up to 10 years. They'll let you leave the box at the winery, and then when you want to have it shipped, you can have it shipped. If you decide 5 years from now, box anymore, you can actually sell the NFTs to and then they can have it shipped. So that's kind of cool. Like it becomes an asset that's sitting at in the Graham's Lodge winery. When you have the bottles at home, though, let's say at some point you decide that you want to open that 1970 port. Well, you can open that bottle, and every pour that glass for, that glass of beautiful 1970 port for, you can give them a tasting token. And we've shown kind of how easy that is. We're actually building some really cool tutorials for our website where you can see how simple it is to do. But what's really fun about that is everybody that gets one of those tasting tokens for that 1970 port instantly gets access to do a free tasting back at Graham's Lodge. So that normally costs about 25 euros. So just by opening the bottle at home and pouring it for family and friends, you're giving them like $125 gift at Graham's Lodge.
Very cool. Very, very
Right?
cool.
Like
Okay, so that's an
pretty cool, right,
example
Jan?
of I mean, I think that's amazing. So that's an example then of how when we work with winemakers, and when we not only attach digital corks to physical bottles and things like this, what we're actually doing is opening up the opportunity for a winemaker to incentivize their truest fans, right? So, and they can do
That's
that
right.
however they want.
So
Cool.
imagine, like, here's the thing about this. So there's a bunch of cool elements to it. Element number 1, by incentivizing and this is a pretty big incentive, right? You get up to 12 tasting tokens for every bottle. Each tasting token is worth €100. So when you open that bottle of wine, you're giving out, even though you spent €800 on the two bottle pack, you're getting actually for each bottle. So it's 20, you get tasting tokens for both bottles. So for across all of that's tasting tokens. Each tasting token is worth €125 at the winery. So that's like a €200 value just for opening the bottles, right? So it's a huge amount of value that you're providing. And like, what a cool thing, right? I'm open for you. Not only am I sharing with you the experience of tasting a 50-year-old vintage port, which is kind of cool, but I'm also giving you a gift certificate to go visit the winery, $125 gift certificate to go visit the winery and do a taste and have a tasting experience there. So me as a consumer, I'm giving that to you.
So how does that work? So I show up then to Rams and show my tasting token, and that gets me my tasting. Is that
That's exactly right. It's just that simple. It's right in the account. You can go in, and actually that's a thing that we'll do a demo for that on the website. But once you go in, it's a very quick go into your website on the app on your phone. You click through to your account. There's a little QR code. They'll scan that QR code and they'll say, "Oh, you get access. You get it for free." And so that's how easy it is. Super simple. So they just show their tasting token and they get access. Pretty cool.
Wow.
So
pretty cool.
So that's really fun, and it kind of creates this cool flywheel, right? Like you go to the winery, you have a great experience, you get these great wines, then you go home to your friends, you pour a glass for your friends. Now they can go to the winery, maybe then they'll buy the wine, and then they'll go home and open the glass for their friends, and then they'll come to the winery. So like it creates a really cool flywheel effect for the winery. And really importantly, that flywheel is it's the best kind of word of mouth, right? It's like, I'm in love with this wine. I love this winery. I want you to be in love with it too. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to go to that winery and have a cool experience, and then be able to buy, this bottle that's incredibly rare and incredibly hard to find. So that's one, right? That's thing number one.
As well.
Well, no, but that's just one element of it. So let me talk about the second element, which is also very cool. I believe there are only, I'm going to need to do the math on this, but I think that there are only these bottles that they're going to re-release. I think they only have 100 of the 1970 bottles, right? So after they sell them all, there will be 100 out there in the world. And then when I open it, it will burn that token and tell everyone, right? It will tell the winery, it will tell dVIN, and it will tell the whole world that now there's one less of those 1970 vintage port bottles out there.
Right.
And then when you open your bottle, there will be 98. And then when, Bedard opens his bottle, 97. And so as there are fewer and fewer of those bottles available, like, let's say I have 2 of them, it's going to be worth more, because that scarcity is actually tracked on the blockchain. And pretty soon you'll get down to 5 bottles left or 2 bottles left. Yeah.
Talk about market transparency, Dave. Brilliant. This doesn't exist in the wine world today.
Think if you had 1982 Petrus or the 1999 Corton Charlemagne or the 1996 Chateau Margaux. Like, if you knew exactly how many bottles were left in the world, you would really be able to know how much your bottle is worth, and it would add a really to the secondary market.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. So that's
All
thing
right.
number 2.
How many
Let me
things
talk
are
about
there?
thing number 3. Well, I'm only going to do 3, but there's a lot more.
I was gonna
But
say.
well, actually, I'm going to do 4. Okay. So the
Okay.
third is data.
Yes.
So imagine the winemaker now. So this 100 bottles it's probably insignificant. But let's say they decided to tokenize their entire 2022 vintage, right? All of the vintage ports for 2022. Well, as those bottles are either opened or traded in the aftermarket, as something happens to those, they'll get to see that on a map, right? They'll get to see that in real time. And so now the winery, oh, this bottle got traded to this person and this bottle got traded to this person at this price. So they'll get to see kind of what the secondary market looks like. Right now, there's no data available for that. This will provide data for the secondary market for the winemaker. But just as importantly, or maybe more importantly, they'll get opened. They'll get to see how many people are, like on average, are tasting. How many people are you sharing that bottle with when you open it? Because they don't have any idea right now. No, they have no idea. Like when I open a bottle of vintage port, am I sharing that with 3 other people? Am I sharing that with 10 other people? Am I usually waiting 5 years before I open my vintage port, or 15 before I open my vintage port? They don't know, and because they don't know, it really makes it less difficult for them to not only make marketing decisions, but even to a certain extent making product decisions. If they knew that people were waiting 15, 20 years to open the vintage port, they might make different decisions in the vineyard, different decisions in the winery, different decisions in different decisions in marketing when they're opening the wine. And so having that data, right now they have no data. They just have no information. They don't know where their wines are going. They don't know who's opening them. They don't know when. They don't know who's tasting them. This gives them that data, and that data, if as any business person knows, data is what runs your business. And wine is one of the few industries in the world where there's almost no data, especially in the luxury side.
Yeah.
There's really almost zero data.
Okay, so we're talking about really empowering winemakers, right? And it sounds, I mean, playing the long game here, right? Especially if you're talking about attaching digital corks to bottles, where in the future, if it's investment grade wines and rare and collectible wines, all of those new releases right now, people aren't going to be opening them right away. So at dVIN, what we do is when we actually source wines for our wine drops, part of our member benefits, we're often looking for their library releases so that the winemaker gets some data now, but then also kind of, playing the long game here. And so
and that's why this thing at Graham's is so cool, because there's one old bottle and one new bottle.
Each.
So you get both. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so problem solving for winemakers. So we've got connecting the winemaker with the end consumer, answering all of those, filling in all the blanks, answering all those questions about how many times has the wine traded on the secondary market? How long are people waiting to open the bottles? How many people are they drinking them with? A lot of blanks being filled there. But then the other thing is that we haven't talked about this time, and we've touched on it in a few other episodes, is the value that the winemaker at the moment doesn't get to participate in on the secondary market, and that comes with royalties, right? So that's another problem that we're solving at dVIN. The NFTs, I mean, that's not a dVIN idea, but but the royalty thing is huge for winemakers to be able to participate in that value.
Sure. And so that's actually five things, because I still have one more. So 4 really is royalties. So the way royalties work, it's really simple. An NFT is a smart contract, which means it's a piece of software that sits on the blockchain, and you can determine as part of that contract, all of anything having to do with any transaction. So you can predetermine how any transaction will work, and you can create the rules for that. And what happens, a lot of artists, for example, on the blockchain, is they set a rule where anytime there's a trade in the secondary market, the share of that trade gets a royalty, which is a pretty interesting way for artists to be able to participate in value creation in the secondary market, which is exactly what we're doing for wineries. So as these wines trade in the smart contract, it allows the winemaker to set a royalty, and they can set it at 2% if they want, or they can set it at 10%. And the royalty, I think that the royalty actually does two things. One, it lets them participate in that value, right? So automatically a transaction happens and they get a piece of the transaction. So they get a royalty or a commission from that secondary market trade, which really incentivizes the winemaker to create a lot of value in the secondary market. It gives them a lot more incentive to have more scarcity. It puts them in the same on the same side as the wine collector. So their interests are all aligned, which is really nice and important. And it also lets them participate in that value creation, right? Like, up until today, the winery, they sell the wine at X dollars. If 20 years from now it's selling at 10X dollars, it gets no piece of that. And this really allows the winery to participate. But the second thing it does is it creates a dial for the winemaker to have like almost an invisible hand in the secondary market. So think about it like this. If a winemaker wanted to encourage secondary trades, they want to encourage people to speculate on their bottles or to trade their bottles in the secondary market, they set their royalty very low, 0 or 1% or 1.5%. But if a wine wants to encourage consumption and wants to discourage speculation and discourage people from trading in the secondary market, they could set their royalty rate very high. So they could set it at 8% or 10% or 15%. In which case, if you're a speculator and the winemaker is taking 15% of every trade, that's probably not a wine you're going to want to speculate with, right? Because it would have to move significantly more in order for you to get the kind of returns that you want to get as a speculator. So it kind of clears all of the speculators out of the market, leaves the market for wine lovers. And there are lots of winemakers that want to do that. And so this is a tool that makes it really easy for winemakers to turn that dial up or down depending on what individual motives in the marketplace.
Right. Interesting. Okay. All right. And you're saying that dVIN is planning 2 wineries onto the platform per month for the next year, right?
Yes. The next couple of years. But let me actually mention that we had a 5th thing. And I wanted to talk about the 5th thing.
I thought we did 5.
Important.
And you're breaking them all into 4 other things. There's a lot of things.
Royalty was 4, right?
Yeah.
Royalty.
True.
Number 5, and this is something that we actually don't talk about that much, but it's something that we really need to talk about more. Number 5, community. And community, I find community to be really important. Like, that share your interests. That's kind of part of what the internet is about, right? Being able to find people that love the same things that you do, whether it's the same, true crime podcast or the same, brand of gluten-free pasta or whatever it is, like building community around people that love the same thing or enjoy the same things. I think that actually really, to me, that adds to the experience of wine. When I obscure wineries, like tiny, actually most of the wines that I love are tiny, obscure wineries, right? Whether it's in California or Argentina or wherever. And when I see somebody else, like if I see somebody else post a bottle from, Line Colado from Paso Robles, or, Blackbird from Napa, or Acheval Ferrar from Argentina, or, any of these other little tiny wineries that, most people don't know of, and you only know, like, if you only know if you know. Um,
Yeah.
I always feel like a sense of camaraderie with that person. Like, oh wow, they know the same winemaker. They've had that same experience. They love that wine. What this really allows winemakers to do, create a community around their best fans, right? Around their most
Truest fans.
excited and most engaged fans. And so imagine having a newsletter or a chat room or an event series. Like imagine having like a fan club that could run it. But in order to get in that fan club, you needed to have 5 tasting tokens from the winemaker. Like,
Right.
how cool would that be? And that's not only the winemaker can do, but anybody can do. Like you could do that. Any one of you could do that today. Like any club member could say, I'm going to create the fan club for Acheval Ferrar, which is he's like an old friend and the highest rated winemaker in Argentine history, I think. So I want to create a fan club for Acheval Ferrar, and anybody that has tasting tokens from Acheval Ferrar can join. Like all of a sudden now you have an authentic wine, an authentic community built of people that have had the same experiences and have tried the same things and love the same, like very small thing, and can create events around it. They can create whatever they want.
Yeah.
And I think for winemakers to be able to control, to be able to create that, and even for their fans to be able to create that, I think that's super interesting. And it just couldn't exist without without the platform that we're building.
Right. And actually, we talked in episode 2, we did kind of a deep dive into how to earn rewards with tasting tokens. And we talked a lot about loyalty, and Dave's talking right now about community and being able to build those communities with your truest fans, or build a community around your truest fans and connect to those people directly, which is never, that's never happened in the history of the wine industry before. So very exciting. But the opportunities that Web3 brings around the entire loyalty system is just incredible. The possibilities are endless. I mean, you can token gate experiences. If you have the tasting token, you get in or you don't. And yeah, it's pretty cool to think things that we're going to get as tokens in the future. So I'm really excited to see kind of what we unleash over the next year, and well, over the whole.
And also a million I haven't thought of yet, right? There's and a
Yeah.
million things that the tools don't even exist for yet. So
Yeah,
I think there's really kind of unlimited possibility. So we're
for
super
sure.
excited about it.
Amazing. Also want to just add
The
in, because
5
we
things,
talked
Jenna.
about.
Now we can move.
Now may I?
Sorry.
No, that's good. So we talked about, so hang on a second here. Sorry guys. Okay. So we talked about wineries and bringing on wineries onto the platform in our pilot program, but there's another part of the pilot program that we haven't talked about yet. And I mean, we, not in this, at least. We also are working with retailers, wine bars, and restaurants. So we're bringing them on as well as part of our pilot program. And what's really cool about that is that there are existing communities there as well, right? So if we, for example, start working with a wine bar in Germany, for example, we're going to be able to tokenize their events, and also build the community with the fans of the wine bar, but then also directly with the wine bar's favorite wineries, and so it's also kind of the ripple effect that comes through that as well, which is really exciting. So incentivizing
Super
those
exciting.
community members. Yeah. Okay. So do you have anything else that you want to go into about pilot program, or should we move on?
Well, I mean, what I wanted to say about that is this. So we're moving at the speed of wine. I think when we first started, we were kind of moving at the speed of Web3, which is very, very fast. And, and, that I think got us to critical mass in terms of both consumers really understanding what we're trying to do. It really got us to figure out the product market fit, got us our first, 100 members, and got us a ton of wineries. I mean, I still get incoming from wineries literally, 3 or 4 weeks are writing saying, "Hey, how can we get on how can we get on the waiting list for the pilot program?" Our long-term goal really is to be ubiquitous in luxury wine. And I know that if you're listening to this, you probably have at least heard of one of the other wine and NFT or wine and Web3 projects. There are lots of them out there. We really tend to distinguish ourselves from all of the other ones by saying we don't want to compete with any of them. Our goal, there may be someone that we want to compete for right now. We really just, we're not really interested in building a big consumer brand. We're not really interested in building a big, dVIN branded marketplace. And in fact, 5 years from now, my hope is that, what we do is connect winemakers and wine lovers, and nobody even knows that we're there, right? We're just connecting them. We're in the background. We're a platform like Stripe, buy something from most e-commerce providers. I think Stripe has like a 60-70% in e-commerce. You're probably using Stripe, whether or not you know it or not, you're probably using Stripe or you're interacting with Stripe. Stripe is a payment processing platform that really in between like e-commerce software and the e-commerce companies. It's a very thin layer, and they don't charge very much. They charge a very small amount, but they're part of the action. And it makes it really easy for them they have lots of data, they work with everybody, and I think really want to do the same thing. In the long run, we want to be that little thin layer that works with everyone. And that means if you've read about, seen wine and Web3 company, or if you work for another wine and Web3 company, we probably want to work with you. We can. Most of the other players, we will continue talking to everyone that kind of enters the space. We're not interested in building a big consumer brand. We're not interested in taking, big rents or a huge part of the market. We want to power the whole industry. And we're happy to take a little tiny piece and be a very narrow provider, but we want to be there for everybody. And what that does is it creates a really interesting way for the industry to move more fluid. It really does. I think. It kind of lubricates the industry in general because you're really providing all of that connective tissue. And again, that's really be that that very thin layer provider.
Great.
Completely ubiquitous.
Wow. And how long do you think it's going to take for the industry to adopt this? I mean, obviously we are seeing a lot of incoming from wineries, but there's going to be a difference between when winemakers start adopting it and when consumers start to feel really comfortable with adopting these new behaviors and obviously, really engaging or interacting with NFTs or even getting used to the blockchain at all. How long do you think it's going to take for that to feel like
So
mainstream?
I make a lot of comparisons to airline miles. And I don't know if I've done this on the podcast yet, but that comparison it's really interesting. If you look back, 50 years ago, there was no such thing as airline miles. That happened maybe 30 years ago. It really started in sort of the mid 90s where you could collecting, you would take in order to collect your miles. And this is honest to God true. I used to do it where you'd take a flight, and after you got home from your flight, you would take your boarding pass and you would put it in an envelope and an address for the airline on the envelope and lick a stamp, and you would send your boarding pass into the airline, and the airline would, and they would add your to your add your miles to your account, and then you every month you would get a statement in the mail, just like a bank statement, that would say this is how many miles you have. That's how you would claim your miles. That's where that whole wording comes from. You claim your miles by sending in your boarding
Right.
pass, because proves that you've taken the flight. That's your authentic
Yeah.
proof of experience, right? So that was kind of how it started. And then it got a little bit easier, where when the airlines had websites, that kind of started maybe end of the 90s, like around 2000. You would go to the airline website, but not to buy a ticket. Like you still couldn't buy your airline ticket from the airline itself. You would have to buy your airline ticket from a travel agent, or maybe from Expedia. Like you started being able to do it from Expedia. And again, like, I don't want to age myself, but times I would buy tickets from Expedia online, and they would have to mail me or FedEx me the ticket. Like, there was no such thing as a digital ticket. Yeah, no, you absolutely had to have a physical ticket. So they would mail it to you. So, and that was many years where such thing as a digital ticket. You actually had to have the physical ticket in order to get on the plane. But in those cases, you could take the ticket number and go to the website and like sign into the website. And again, it's hard for people to understand, but signing into a website in the 90s, like there were maybe 3 websites that you could sign into. You could sign into Amazon, and you could sign into Google and a couple others, Yahoo maybe. But most websites weren't personalized for you. Most websites were just websites, right? It's the last 20 years or so, Web 2, when you would sign into a website and like it was personalized for you. It was maybe 20 years ago when you could sign into an airline's website and claim your miles online instead of having to do it through the mail. So like that took years and years and years. And then it was probably maybe later or so. I mean, I probably around 2000 and I don't know, 2005, 2006, maybe 2008 was when you started buying your tickets directly from airlines. Like that was only 15 years ago. So what, from the time that you could first claim miles to the time with the airline automatically, that was probably 10 years. So I don't think it's going to be 10 years, right? It's going to take a little bit of time for this all to, and so, we're kind of, I think we're moving at that speed.
Okay. I can remember we talked to Jane Anson about this a while ago, probably last year in Bordeaux. And I think she was saying that, imagine it's about 5 years before every, big winery name is attaching digital corks or NFTs to their investment grade collections, or at least maybe to their entire range, but definitely for the investment grade and rare collectible wine space, that those wines.
I think it's probably 5 to 10 years. I think that's probably right. Yeah.
Okay.
But the one thing that's kind of interesting, and this is another little tidbit, that I think it's sort of telling and really interesting, which is, you and I both live in Europe, and in Europe, a mile, when people talk about miles, it is not a unit distance. Distance in Europe is a kilometer. A mile is almost exclusively a unit of airline loyalty. That's all mile means to anyone. It doesn't mean I get a certain number of points. They don't even know what a mile is. Like most people in Europe, they don't learn what a mile is. They just know that when they take a flight, they get these things called miles, and those things are what gets them rewards and status and incentives with the airline. And so the biggest challenge for us is how can we do that same thing? How can we make sure that every single person in the world loves wine, every wine lover, that they know that if you're opening a nice bottle of wine, you got to get your miles. I got to get my tasting tokens, right? I have to get my tasting token because if I, as long as I claim that, that's gonna, I don't know what's gonna, what necessarily, I don't know exactly what it's gonna get me, but it's gonna get me something. And the more
Right.
I collect, the more rewards I'm gonna get from my. So, like the idea is for us to make it dead simple, super easy, 1 second, take 1 second to do, so that you don't have to, put your boarding pass in an envelope and lick a stamp in order to get it. And then number
Yeah.
two, we need to make it an unbelievable, great deal, a fantastic reward, so that people not, but that they want to do it because they know that if they get those tasting tokens, that's going to earn them rewards in the future. So that kind of logical problem, making it, that's a messaging issue. How can we make sure that everybody knows about this? And that's really why we're moving slowly and deliberately, focusing on wines that are kind of ready to drink, but then also seeding wines that are going to be ready to drink in 20 years.
In the future, do you see that being an industry-wide program? Like, is there going to be one dominant player? Is it dVIN who's going to be, creating this reward system? Or do you think that everyone is going to have kind of their, like it?
I think they'll have their own. I think every winery will have their own. And that's really our plan, is to try out everything, right? We're going to try out tastings. We're going to try out barrel tastings. We're going to try out winemaker dinners
Harvest
and
events.
virtual tastings and harvest events. We're going to try, status. How do I get to Grand Cru status? And once I do, what does that mean? We're going to try out those things, and the ones that work and the ones that stick, we're going to go to the wineries and say, you should do this. And the ones that don't work, we're going to not tell anybody about and kind of shove and sweep it under the rug. That's the plan.
All right. Awesome. So if you guys are interested in more on the system loyalty program talk, check out episode 2 of the series because we did a deep dive into all of that good stuff. But all right. Okay. So Dave, we're coming up to the hour, actually. Time flies when you're
wow, it wasn't
you're
supposed to
drinking
be that
good
long.
wine. I know, and my
All
glass
right.
is pretty much empty, so that's also, that's a sad thing. It's a great wine. This is the one you're always drinking when we do these. And now that I'm sharing the
I'm a
office
big
space
fan of
with
this
you
bottle.
again, it's very good. Very, very good. Thank you.
Should we
Yeah, well,
call, why don't we do this? Why don't we call it, and let's have a whole episode on AI, and maybe we can bring
okay,
in a couple
we
of
can do that.
people as guests.
Yeah. But first, let's just talk a little bit about what's coming up, because we're going to be in Hamburg on May 10th. We are going to be doing a kind of like a master class. We're going to be on the blue stage at 6 p.m. If anyone's going to be at the OMR festival in Hamburg, Dave and I are going to be presenting together with 30 Acker, which is an awesome German winery who are also working with NFTs and have invited us to be a part of their stage. So definitely check that out if you're going to be there. We are going to be we're going to be really traveling again now, starting soon, Dave. We've got some plans to meet up with Real Vision in Mallorca right before that. Have we announced yet our second chapter? Have we spilled the beans on that yet?
No, but let's do that in an episode. Let's have a whole episode where we do it, and then let's bring on a special guest. I think you know who.
I think I know who it is. Very good. Okay, cool. And then anybody still interested in, I mean, I'm sure all of our members are very interested in Bhutan. We are going to be doing what are we calling it, Dave? In July, we're doing our steering committee is going to be in Bhutan.
The steering committee trip. Yeah. And we need to work on steering committee now. That's actually, it's really creeping up. It's almost May. Like, we need to get on it, and we need to start telling people about it, and we need to do it now. So I feel like we're behind on that. That's the thing. Maybe we can talk about that next week in Burgundy.
Yeah. Dave and I.
So it should be 100% about Bhutan.
We've got AI and we've got Bhutan, two very, very exciting we have Michael and Anne on the call. They have founded the Bhutan Wine Company, who we're doing our event with next year. So we'll definitely have to have them join us. Well, I'm sure we've got lots of news on that. And otherwise, guys, the only way right now to get into Club dVIN is, since our public sale is closed and our friends and family offering is open March 31st. So right way to get in club is by sipping your way in, which means that if you can get yourself a tasting token, if one of your friends pours you a glass of wine and mints you a tasting token, that token gets you through to the purchasing page in our app. So if you've got a tasting token, you can buy a membership. And sip your way in program. And we've still got our wait list going. So be sure to check out our website and sign yourself up for the wait list if you can a wine for you, who has a tasting token for you. All right. Anything else? Do we have any questions in the chat? Well, we've got Jessica tuning in from Florida. Hey, Jess. No
Florence,
QR code
Alabama.
for today from D-Man. We're not.
I'm not going to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do one next time. We just ran out of time.
I know we get very chatty. Okay, amazing. Well, thanks everybody for joining. And this is cool. I'm in the office with Dave today. This is a rare occurrence. So yeah, we're gonna be heading out to Burgundy. Keep an eye on the dVIN stories and the Wine Girls. And we'll be talking to you again soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Shanna.
Thanks, Dave. Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.